You can ask about it, but nobody knows the way. No breadcrumb trail to follow through your days. It takes an axe sometimes, a feather in the sunshine and bad weather. It's a matter.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Ballou. Welcome to Jeannie on the Beat, Talking with the Talent, Ann Arbor's hottest talk variety show, where I'll bring you up close and personal with fabulous writers, performers, and other fascinating folks. My guest tonight is world-renowned master violin maker Joseph Curtin. Joseph crafts original world-class violins for the 21st century at his studio right here in Ann Arbor. Later we will be joined by violist Kyun Jiao, who will be performing on one of Joseph's violas. Welcome, Joseph.
Delighted to be here, Jeannie.
It's great to have you here. So I have a couple of questions right off the bat for you. First, do you play violin?
I play the violin. In fact, I just started taking violin lessons again after many, many years. I'm not a good violinist, but I love to play.
So do you think that somebody has to play an instrument to be an instrument maker?
I have colleagues who are very good makers who don't play, but there's at least two reasons why you'd want to play. The most important being how do you know how good your instrument is? You can listen to people playing it, but it's not the same as being inside the loop.
Yeah.
And the other, of course, is why are you interested in making? And a lot of people get to it by playing the violin. I was a failed violinist.
Oh. Okay.
That's what got me to making.
Yeah, tell me about that. How did you get started making violins?
Well, I had no inkling I would ever be a violin maker. When I was young, I liked building things, but I wanted to be a scientist. And then I fell in love with violin, but didn't really have good lessons until quite late in my life for a violinist. So at university, I was trying to be a violinist. I was told to quit. It was devastating. Then I took up viola, and I met a couple, Rivka and Otto. She was a violist. She taught me viola, and he was a violin maker, and I kind of gradually switched rooms, so to speak. It became clear to me that violin making was something I could do.
So they inspired you? They were your mentors, or they invited
absolutely.
you to
I was completely lost. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'd always had something I wanted to do, and then someone told me I couldn't do that, which was playing. And until I met them, I was really drifting. I was in my early 20s and had no idea what to do.
That's so painful. You know, we never forget those things, do we?
We don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
It's really important to remember the power of our words. Can you tell us, I know this is like, you could go tell us volumes about this, but in a nutshell, very quickly, what is the basic process for making a violin?
The basic process starts with the wood, which means finding good wood, and this is a piece of wood that I got in Italy last year for the back of a violin.
Okay. So that just looks like a piece of wood.
Yeah,
what's special about it?
we bend what I call the sides, the ribs, around a form, and you can start to see the shape materialize, and then you'd trace that onto the wood.
Okay.
Then you'd cut that out.
Oh, I see. So that's just your form, and then you,
Yeah, and then you cut that out, and then you'd end up with, this is a finished version of the back of a violin. I mean, that's all carved there and there. And then the scroll similarly is carved from a block of wood. This is ebony glued on to that. Maple is the principal wood for.
Is it typical? Is it always ebony used for fingerboards?
The fingerboards, it shouldn't be, because there's a lot of better materials these days. It's a rainforest wood. It shouldn't be used.
It's a rare, exotic kind of wood, right? Endangered?
Yes, yes. So one of my projects is trying to find alternatives.
Okay.
And actually, ebony's not very good. It wears down much too quickly. So players are having to get their instruments planed and things. Or there's a lot of materials now that should never need to be.
So there's other wood that actually would be better.
Or composites, you know, fiber resin composites.
Okay, great. And how much, as a violin maker, how much is today science and technology versus art? Because for centuries it's always been the art of making the violin, you know?
Well, it's really the craft of making a violin.
Okay.
Art, well, in a loose sense, like the art of medicine, I think of art as something where each creation has to be different, but the violin is a traditional craft, and So the art of making is a kind of a collection of traditions of woodworking, of sound, which one tries to understand and hopefully master. Science applied to the violin is relatively new. Scientists have long been interested in it, and I became very interested, and to the point where I can't really separate the science and the art. They're just both trying to understand the beauty of the violin and hopefully learn how to make it work better or look better.
Well, considering that you wanted to be a scientist as a kid, and then you wanted to be a violin player, you really were the perfect person to become a violin maker.
Yes, I
for
feel
today.
Incredibly lucky, because the things I've been passionately interested in my life, building things, science, art. My mother's a painter, my father's a photographer, so I was always drawing. And then music, which I kind of drifted between. Suddenly with violin making, I could play in all these sandboxes at the same time.
You just brought it all together.
Yes, no,
just like that zing kind of moment.
Yeah, it was really very, very lucky.
Really exciting. And here you are, many years later, still doing it.
Yes, and I still love it.
And you still love it.
Yes.
That's beautiful. I love that. So what kind of wood is the best wood to use? Well,
the violin evolved around a couple of species, maple, European maple, and they look for what's called figured maple, as this lovely curl to it. But the most important is the top, which is this spruce. And again, pianos, guitars, they're virtually all made with spruce. It's very light and stiff and stable. But once you look at spruce, it's how dense it is, where it's grown, what species, and you spend your life trying to find
hunting
wood.
The perfect tree.
Yes, and I've often felt that I was 3 pieces away from going out of business, because when standard gets higher and higher, and more and more wood becomes stored in the barn, and your wife's asking you, when are you going to get rid of that? But now there's actually very good wood dealers working, and it's actually a pleasure again to be able to find really good wood, and a lot of it's quite sustainably cut now in
and
Europe,
keep your wife
especially.
happy at the same time.
Yes.
All right, sweet. Well, how about if we step into our other studio now and hear from Kyun Zhao, who's going to be playing one of your violas. Sound good?
Super.
Okay.
Thank you. I will play the Alamanda from Bach Cello Suite No. 6.
Oh, Joseph, that was wonderful. Real treat to hear your instrument being played so beautifully by Kyun.
Yes, it was, and
Don't you
nothing
think?
makes a violin maker happier than hearing someone play their instrument.
I can't imagine. I think that would be really exciting. So tell us, what is it that makes your violins unique? Like, what is your signature, so to speak?
Well, I think violin makers have a voice in the way that writers have a voice. It's a kind of a sound I hear in my head, and that I gradually tried to get out of my instruments. In a sense, it's a collection of my workshop habits, my ideas, you know, my ear. So I keep adjusting my sound and evolving my instruments till I hear more of that sound. So I suppose it is my sound. I just hear it as violin sound, whereas, you know, colleagues or clients might say, "Oh, that's your sound."
So you just keep after it and keep honing and honing and honing an instrument until you hear what's in your head.
Yes, I mean, in
you
a
hear that
sense.
sound.
People sometimes ask, so what do you do if you make a bad sounding instrument? Well,
Yeah.
that's just an unfinished instrument. You know, I'll make a new top or a new back or
You
whatever is
just keep
needed.
after it.
Yes, I think for me that's
It's sort of like there's no such thing as a bad kid, right?
well. There's also
no sociopathic violins that are
there's
like
finishers.
unredeemable.
Yes, there's finishers, people who tend to finish things and wrap them up and it's done. And there's people who don't finish. And for me, nothing's ever finished.
Nothing-
I
yeah,
mean,
how do
when
you
I'm
know
writing,
when
I
you're
tend to
done?
rewrite. When violins, I've had violins that come back 10 years later for an adjustment, and I end up revarnishing them. I mean, it's
Wow,
just,
really?
But
Interesting. I think that's a question for all artists is, you know, when is the art
Yes,
cooked? When is it
yes.
really done? When is it
Yes.
cooked? Or when is it done enough, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So where are some of your violins today?
They are, well, I guess around the world, although the older I get, the more I want to be a local maker because I like to be able to adjust them and keep them in shape. So I've got some of my favorite clients are in Chicago, for example.
So local meaning within driving
means-
distance of where
well,
you
no,
are.
no, local means where FedEx can deliver overnight, and that tends
I
to
see.
be in
So
the
that's
contiguous United
The
States.
U.S.
Yes.
It's
yes.
the small local neighborhood here in the U.S. as opposed to Ann Arbor.
Well, I think
Okay.
well, the amazing thing about shipping is that it is local. I mean, I can
Yeah.
call FedEx at 5:30. They'll come pick up my violin. It'll be across the country the next day and in good shape.
It's amazing.
And I couldn't be in business without that.
Wow.
I mean, there isn't a focused market unless you go to New York or maybe Chicago, and then there's this turnover
Yeah.
of people. But then, of course, there's a turnover of people bothering you.
So we take a moment to honor the FedEx delivery people at this time of year especially. Thank you, Joseph. Tell us about your relationship with Gabriel Weinreich. And
Gabriel Weinreich, whom we all know as Gabi, is absolute treasure. He was a physicist when I met him at the University of Michigan, now physicist emeritus, and one of the very few top-notch physicists in the world who've applied themselves to violin acoustics, and so he became quickly a mentor.
just happened to be
Yes,
in the same city here.
And it was one reason. I'd met him looking around for someone to live, and he was definitely a plus, having I'd just become interested in the science of the violin, so it was a very happy thing. So some of my happiest hours have just been sitting in his office in an armchair and talking about how the violin works, and it's now, we're actually doing a fair bit of research together now at my studio.
Yeah, tell us about your new business venture and what you're up to with that.
Well,
with him.
it's called a digital violin, and electric violins make a certain kind of sound that's not much like an acoustic violin, and the project was how can you get the sound of a beautiful acoustic violin from an electric violin, and we worked out a system where I can do an acoustical measurement and get kind of the tonal fingerprint of any violin, a Stradivari, one of mine, and import that into an electronic file. And then when you play the electric violin, it can sound like the specific acoustic violin or that one. And that was, Gabi and I did the preliminary research and worked out some of the main problems. It seemed to work well. Okay, fine, move on. But then I'm a young designer from the University of Michigan, got interested in it, and then he and a friend who's an electrical engineer, Alex Sobolev's the designer, his friend John Bell, who's an electrical engineer, and they decided to try and develop it. So they've actually started a company, and the devil's always in the details. It's then working out all the little bits of electronics, and this is a prototype.
One of them.
An early prototype.
Oh, I think it's broken, Joseph. I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, that's this can adjust for different playing positions, and a lot of electric instruments have kind of a rock aesthetic or a minimal aesthetic. This is intended to look something like a violin from the audience, so they can see that one's playing an instrument.
I see. But it wouldn't even have to really look like that to get the sound.
Although we wanted something you could give to a classical player and they would feel comfortable, which means having certain proportions here. But down the line, we may make much more ergonomically shaped instruments.
Can we see it from the back? Can you show us that? Oh, wow. So it is so different. I mean, it's really, really thin. The body is...
Yes. It doesn't rely on a resonating chamber. In fact, we rather want to not have
where's the plug-in?
The plug-in on this one is here.
Oh, it's hiding
but
behind there.
the next version, which will be much more like the final one, is wireless. So you won't have any wires. It'll be like a little stomp box. You can turn it on and off and change the sound with somewhat. So
are you playing with completely different kinds of designs that don't even look like violins?
I have. That's right now not the most interesting part. The first thing is to get it more or less like a normal violin in terms of, and then we want to give it to some players and field test it, and then see what people want. There'll be people who want something completely different. There'll be people who want something rather similar.
That's very exciting.
It is, yes.
It's like the whole future, at least one possible path.
Absolutely.
For the future of violin making.
I have clients who play jazz and fusion things, contexts where they need amplification. It's very problematic with an acoustic violin with feedback, so it'll fill that niche. But also hopefully more classical, or so-called classical contemporary music will involve it. Oddly enough, most people in the world haven't heard a violin live. They've heard it through a loudspeaker, through recordings. Yeah. And this sort of thing goes straight into that, so it makes a lot of sense the way culture is going.
That's really interesting. Oh, thank you. I understand also that you were, I want to say congratulations first, that you are a recipient of the Genius Grant, the MacArthur Award, which is very exciting, a $500,000 award that was given to you to do with whatever you please. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
To pursue your passion and pursue your art and your science, right? So I'm curious to know, what impact did that have on you to receive that award? Was it out of the blue? Did you expect it?
Oh, it's quite out of the blue. Lucky my wife Jessie was home, so we could jump up and down and scream.
Did you just got a phone call? How did it, like in the middle of the night or what?
No, in the morning. They set it up so you're there. They'd had this fake appointment for someone to come and try violas, and then someone from MacArthur called and said, well, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is so-and-so won't be ordering a viola. The good news is you have MacArthur Fellowship, of course.
Oh, darn.
Is this some kind of a joke? But it was an incredible thing to have happened.
I can't even
just
imagine.
Incredible. I take it as saying the only downside is no one ever wants to hear you complain about anything ever again.
That's right.
And
Give me a break.
I missed that.
Yeah, Joseph. Wah, wah, wah. Do the little miniature violin thing, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show with me.
A great pleasure.
Also, thanks to Q and Zhao for playing. And thank you both. And I also want to thank Ann Arbor for joining us tonight. And remember to join us the fourth Tuesday of each month at 10:30 p.m. and look for rebroadcasts of Jeannie on the Beat at various times throughout the week. Ciao, Ann Arbor.
Thank you.